Duidela van van Yuko. Number 10. Heracleon, the Egyptian Atlantis. Imagine this. You're an archaeologist, right? You've spent your entire career sifting through desert sands, painstakingly brushing dust off pottery shards, and maybe, just maybe, finding a fancy tomb. But what if all the stories you've ever heard about a legendary long-lost city were actually true? And what if that city was just chilling at the bottom of the ocean? Welcome to the story of Heracleon, also known as Thonis. For centuries, this place was a whispered myth, a name that popped up in ancient Greek texts like Herodotus' writings, but with no physical proof it ever existed. It was the stuff of legends, a bustling port city where the hero Heracles himself supposedly first set foot in Egypt, and where Helen of Troy visited with her lover Paris. Historians thought, yeah, sure, sounds like a cool bedtime story. They were so wrong. In the year 2000, a team of underwater archaeologists led by Frank Gaudio was searching for French warships from the Battle of the Nile, but they stumbled upon something far more incredible. About 6 kilometers off the coast of modern-day Alexandria, they found a colossal red granite statue of the god Happy, then another, then a third, and then an entire city. It wasn't just a few ruins, it was an entire civilization, perfectly preserved beneath 10 meters of water and silt. The city, which was once Egypt's largest port, was swallowed by the Mediterranean Sea sometime in the 8th century AD, likely due to a series of earthquakes and tidal waves that caused the land to liquefy and sink. Talk about a bad day. Everything was frozen in time, from giant statues of gods and pharaohs to smaller, everyday items like coins, jewelry, and ritualistic objects. It was as if someone had hit the pause button on an entire culture. The most amazing part? The discovery solved a historical puzzle. Thonis and Heracleon, once thought to be two separate cities, were actually the same place. Thonis was the Egyptian name, and Heracleon was the Greek name. So, basically, they found a city that was so important, it needed two names. Number 9. Göbekli Tepe, the world's first temple, Lisel. For pretty much all of recorded human history, we thought we had it all figured out. Farming came first. People settled down, grew crops, built villages, and then, and only then, did they start getting fancy with things like religion, monumental architecture, and civilization. Once they had time to spare from, not starving. It was a neat, orderly progression that made perfect sense. But in 1994, a German archaeologist named Klaus Schmidt started digging into a hill in southeastern Turkey that had been dismissed by a previous survey as nothing more than an old medieval graveyard. He uncovered something that didn't just challenge that theory. It took the theory, tossed it in a blender, and hit puree. What he found was Göbekli Tepe, a site made of massive 20-foot-tall T-shaped limestone pillars, some weighing as much as 50 tons. These weren't just a few standing stones either. They were arranged in elaborate circular enclosures, and many were intricately carved with images of fierce animals like lions, foxes, and wild boar. The real mind-bender? Carbon dating showed these structures were built over 11,000 years ago, making them a full 6,000 years older than Stonehenge and over 7,000 years older than the pyramids of Giza. This was before the invention of pottery, before agriculture, and before people were supposedly living in permanent settlements. The people who built Göbekli Tepe were hunter-gatherers. That's right, nomadic folks who lived day to day, following their food. This discovery completely flips our understanding of how civilization developed. It suggests that complex religion and the desire to build a massive communal site came before the need to farm. Maybe people gathered to build this temple, and the act of working together for a common purpose, not just surviving, is what led them to settle down and eventually invent farming. Basically, they built a church before they built a house. Number 8. Lanza Meadows, the Viking outpost. Remember those old school rivalries, like who was first to the moon, or who invented the internet? Well, for centuries, the debate over who discovered America was a pretty lopsided affair, with Christopher Columbus getting all the credit. That's what your history books told you, right? Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1492, and the rest is history. But what if that history was missing a few key chapters? The Icelandic sagas, epic tales written down in the 13th century, spoke of a Norse explorer named Leif Erikson, who sailed west from Greenland to a place he called Vinland, land of wine, where he and his crew established a short-lived settlement. For hundreds of years, these sagas were treated like ancient fan fiction, a cool story, but not real. And then in 1960, a Norwegian explorer named Helge Ingstad and his archaeologist wife, Anne Steen Ingstad, went on a hunch. They were led by a local fisherman to a remote, windswept point on the northern tip of Newfoundland, Canada, where a series of overgrown, grassy mounds looked suspiciously like the foundations of old houses. What they uncovered was a full-blown Norse settlement from around 1000 AD. There were 8 timber-framed buildings, including dwellings, workshops, and even a forge for working iron, a technology that wasn't used by the indigenous people of the area at the time. They also found artifacts like a bronze pin, a stone oil lamp, and a spindle whorl, which is a tool used for weaving wool, a clear sign that women were also part of the expedition. The artifacts and the architectural style were a perfect match for Norse settlements in Greenland and Iceland from the same time period, and carbon dating confirmed it. This wasn't a myth, it was real. The Ingstads had found the first and only confirmed Viking site in North America outside of Greenland, proving that Europeans had landed on the continent almost 500 years before Columbus. This means the Vikings were the real OGs of transatlantic travel. Hy vọng đoạn văn này đáp ứng nhu cầu của bạn. Dưới đây là đoạn văn bạn nhu cầu. Number 7. The Sunken City of Dwarka. You've probably heard of the ancient Indian epic, the Mahabharata. It's a sprawling tale of gods, heroes, and epic battles, and in it there's a legendary city called Dwarka, the kingdom of the god Krishna. The story goes that after Krishna's death, the city was consumed by the sea, a divine punishment for the end of an age. For thousands of years, people thought this was just a myth, a fantastical piece of storytelling with no basis in reality. It was a nice story, but nobody actually believed a whole city had been swallowed by the ocean. In the late 1980s, the renowned marine archaeologist S.R. Rao set out to find it. He was convinced there was more to the myth than just a story, and what he and his team found was truly stunning. Using sonar, they located a submerged city off the coast of modern-day Dwarka in the Gulf of Kutch. The discovery of these massive geometric structures, including a fortified seawall, a grid of streets, and a series of harbors, provided compelling evidence that the legend was based on a real historical city. The ruins are located at a depth of about 40 meters, and the way they're laid out suggests a highly planned, sophisticated settlement. They found artifacts like pottery shards and ancient anchors, and the sheer scale of the ruins points to a major port city, one that would have been a hub of trade and culture. Carbon dating of the artifacts placed the city's demise around 1500 BC, a time frame that aligns remarkably with the events described in the Mahabharata. While some scholars still debate whether this is the mythical Dwarka itself, or just a very old, very large city, the discovery proved that the legend of a major city sinking into the sea was not just a flight of fancy. It was a catastrophic event that was so traumatic, it became immortalized in one of the world's most enduring stories. Number 6. The Lost City of the Monkey God. Imagine a legend so terrifying and so deeply ingrained in a culture that locals are afraid to even speak its name. This is the story of the White City, or the Lost City of the Monkey God, a mythical metropolis hidden in the dense, unexplored jungles of the Mosquitia region of Honduras. For centuries, explorers and treasure hunters scoured the rainforest, chasing after rumors of a city made of gleaming white stone, filled with ancient treasures and home to a mysterious half-man, half-monkey god. But the jungle fought back. People who tried to find it either got lost, fell ill with strange diseases, or simply disappeared. It was considered the ultimate fool's errand, a myth so dangerous that it was better left alone. But in the early 2000s, a new kind of explorer showed up, one with a new kind of weapon, light detection and ranging, or LiDAR. This technology, mounted on an airplane, fires billions of laser pulses at the ground, and by measuring the time it takes for the light to bounce back, it can create a detailed, three-dimensional map of the terrain beneath the jungle canopy. It basically acts like a high-tech X-ray machine for the rainforest. In 2012, a team of archaeologists and filmmakers used LiDAR to scan a remote valley in Meskhetiya, and what they saw was breathtaking. The scans revealed a massive man-made complex of plazas, earthen mounds, and a pyramid, all completely hidden by the jungle. When the team landed and started exploring on foot, they found a treasure trove of artifacts, including a collection of exquisite stone sculptures of jaguars, snakes, and vultures, and a stunning ceremonial seat, a medet, carved with the head of a monkey. The city was abandoned for unknown reasons, and the team had to be careful. The jungle was full of venomous snakes, and they contracted a terrifying flesh-eating parasite called leishmaniasis, a disease that, according to local legend, guards the city from outsiders. So the old tales of people getting sick were, in fact, not just a metaphor. The city was real, and the jungle was still guarding its secrets. Hy vọng bạn hài lòng với bản sao của đoạn văn này. Dưới đây là đoạn văn bạn yêu cầu. Number 5. Pavlopetri, the submerged city. Think about the oldest civilizations you know, the Egyptians with their pyramids, the Mesopotamians with their ziggurats, but what about a city that was old before those even existed? This is the story of Pavlopetri, a city that was a bustling trade hub in the Bronze Age, sitting in the shallow waters just off the coast of Laconia, Greece. It's a place so ancient, it makes the Greek philosophers look like modern teenagers. The site was originally discovered in 1967 by Nicholas Fleming, an oceanographer from the University of Southampton. He found a strange series of stone formations underwater and immediately realized they were not natural. It was a submerged city, but no one really knew how old it was. It wasn't until a joint project between the University of Nottingham and the Hellenic Center for Marine Research in 2009 that the true significance of the site was revealed. Using advanced sonar and robotics, they created the first comprehensive map of the city. What they found was a city with a level of urban planning that was shockingly modern for its time. There were streets, buildings, courtyards, and even tombs, all laid out in an organized grid. The city covers an area of about 100,000 square meters and is believed to have been a major port for the Mycenaean civilization, a powerful culture that thrived in ancient Greece. Carbon dating on the pottery they found at the site proved that Pavlopetri was built around 2800 BC, making it the oldest submerged city in the world. It was a thriving city for over 1,000 years before a series of earthquakes plunged it into the sea around 1100 BC. So basically, this city was so old it was a ruin before the Iliad and the Odyssey were even written. Number 4. The buried city of Sasenya. Have you ever wondered what happens when a modern city accidentally builds on top of an even older one? You get something like Sasenya, a town in Spain that sits atop the ruins of a massive, previously unknown Bronze Age city. This isn't a lost civilization in a remote jungle or at the bottom of the sea. It's a lost civilization that was just chilling underneath a very modern, very suburban Spanish town. The discovery was a complete accident. In the mid-2000s, as developers were building a new housing complex in Sasenya, they started turning up some very old, very interesting artifacts. What began as a small find quickly escalated into a major archaeological discovery. Archaeologists started digging and found the remains of a vast settlement, which they've named Las Huertas. They've uncovered evidence of a large, well-organized city with a clear street grid, large communal buildings, and a complex system of defenses. The city was a major center for the Bronze Age culture of the Iberian Peninsula, and its discovery is completely changing our understanding of the region's prehistory. The city was likely a hub for trade and a major political power in the region, but for reasons unknown, it was abandoned around 1500 BC. The land was eventually covered by soil and forgotten, with new generations of people building their lives right on top of it. It's like finding out your basement is built on top of a medieval castle, except in this case, the city below is thousands of years older. Hy vọng bạn hài lòng với bản sao này. Dưới đây là đoạn văn bạn yêu cầu. Number 3. Halik, the real-life Poseidon's wrath. We all know the story of Atlantis, the mythical island that sank into the sea in a single day and night. But what if there was a real-life version of that tale? A city that actually met its end in a similar, catastrophic way. Enter Halik, an ancient Greek city that was a prominent member of the Achaean League. It was a major cultural and religious center, famous for its temple to Poseidon, the god of the sea and earthquakes. In 373 BC, the city was completely destroyed. The night before the disaster, strange signs appeared. Snakes, weasels, and other animals reportedly fled the city in droves. Then an earthquake struck, followed by a massive tsunami from the Gulf of Corinth. The entire city was swallowed by the sea. The story was so dramatic and so specific that ancient writers like the historian Diodorus Siculus and the geographer Strabo recorded it, and it's widely believed to have been an inspiration for Plato's story of Atlantis. For centuries, the location of Helice was a complete mystery. It wasn't until a team of Greek archaeologists, led by Dora Katsanopoulou and Stephen Soter, began a systematic search in the late 1980s that they finally found it. They weren't looking in the water, however, because geological studies showed that the ground had liquefied and the city was likely buried under a lagoon and layers of sediment. After years of searching, they found the remains of Helice about a kilometer inland from the modern coastline, buried under a thick layer of mud. They found pottery, coins, and the remains of buildings, all perfectly preserved by the mud and clay. The city was a real-life testament to the power of earthquakes and tsunamis, and its rediscovery proves that sometimes the myths we think are just stories are actually based on a very real and very tragic history. Number 2. The lost city of Ubar, the Iram of the Pillars. In the vast, desolate sands of the Arabian Peninsula, there exists a place known to legend as the Empty Quarter, a vast ocean of dunes where almost nothing can survive. For centuries, Arab poets and storytellers spoke of a mythical city hidden within these sands, Ubar, also known as Iram of the Pillars. According to the Quran, this city was a prosperous trading hub filled with magnificent palaces and towers, but its people were so corrupt and arrogant that God destroyed them by burying the city in a cataclysmic sandstorm. For modern explorers, Ubar was a tantalizing legend, the Atlantis of the sands. It was a myth so deeply embedded in local culture that people would speak of it in hushed tones, but no one had ever found a trace of it. It was the archaeological equivalent of a ghost story. The search for Ubar was a classic case of combining old stories with new technology. In the 1980s, a group of archaeologists and explorers, including Sir Ranulph Fiennes and archaeologist Juris Zarins, used a combination of historical texts, satellite imagery, and even clues from the Space Shuttle Challenger to pinpoint a potential location. The satellite images, which could peer beneath the sand, revealed a network of ancient caravan routes that converged on a single point. When the team began to excavate that spot in Oman in 1992, they found the remains of a massive fortress. The fortress was an octagonal structure with towering pillars, exactly as described in the legends. It was a well-fortified oasis that had once been a major hub for the frankincense trade, an extremely valuable commodity in the ancient world. The fortress had been built over a massive limestone cave, and the combination of an earthquake and the collapse of the cave system caused the city to sink into the ground, just as the legend said it would. The discovery of Ubar proved that a city of immense wealth and power could simply disappear, not because of a divine curse, but because of geological instability. Sometimes the most epic stories are just a dramatic retelling of a natural disaster. Hy vọng bạn hài lòng với bản sao này. Dưới đây là đoạn văn bản yêu cầu number 1. The Kingdom of Dilmun, the Sumerian Eden. For a long time, historians and archaeologists thought that the cradle of civilization was a pretty tight club. Mesopotamia, Egypt, maybe the Indus Valley. But what about the other places mentioned in the ancient texts? The Sumerians, the inventors of writing, spoke of a mythical land called Dilmun, a paradise on earth, a pure and holy land where the sun rises. It was described as a major trading center, a place where the sun was brilliant and where there was no sickness or death. It was the land where the hero of the Epic of Gilgamesh went to seek eternal life. Most scholars dismissed Dilmun as a purely mythological place, a sort of Garden of Eden for the Sumerians, but a few thought it might be real. The search for Dilmun led to the island of Bahrain in the Persian Gulf. In the 1950s, a Danish archaeological expedition led by P.V. Glob started excavating a number of ancient burial mounds on the island, and what they found was astonishing. They uncovered a vast civilization with a history of over 4,000 years, a powerful maritime trading empire that controlled the trade routes between Mesopotamia, the Indus Valley, and the Arabian Peninsula. The island was a bustling hub of commerce, a port city that was so wealthy it became a destination for merchants from all over the ancient world. They found an enormous number of artifacts, including intricate seals, pottery, and evidence of massive temple complexes. The city's inhabitants were incredibly skilled at seafaring and trade, and they had a vibrant culture of their own. The most compelling evidence was the discovery of cuneiform tablets from Mesopotamia that directly mentioned Dilmun as a major trading partner. This wasn't a myth. It was a real kingdom, so powerful and so important that it became immortalized in the mythos of one of the world's first great civilizations. Sometimes the paradise people talk about isn't a magical land of gods and monsters, but a place so rich and prosperous that it feels like a paradise to anyone who gets to visit. Hy vọng bạn hài lòng với bản sao này.